I'm Jaden, a 32-year-old software engineer who spent my entire life seeking validation from parents who only had eyes for my younger brother Tyler. When I finally shared my big promotion on Instagram, my mom publicly commented, "Stop bragging, nobody cares. Your brother will always be our pride." The humiliation stung worse than all the forgotten birthdays and missed graduations combined. Little did they know that single comment would trigger the unraveling of our family's facade and reveal the truth about their missing $6,300. Before I dive into what happened, let me know where you're watching from and hit that like and subscribe button to join me on this journey of family drama and personal redemption. Growing up in suburban Minnesota, our family looked picture perfect from the outside. My parents, Margaret and Robert Wilson, built their lives around traditional values and conventional expectations. Dad worked as an accountant at a local firm, while Mom taught third grade at the elementary school down the street. Our two-story colonial house with its neat lawn and white picket fence seemed like the embodiment of the American dream. But inside those walls, a clear hierarchy existed, and I quickly learned my place in it. From the moment my brother Tyler was born when I was 4, I witnessed my parents' faces light up in a way they never did for me. Tyler showed athletic promise early, throwing balls with surprising accuracy as a toddler and running faster than kids several years older. He's a natural athlete, my father would boast to neighbors while ruffling Tyler's hair. "Going to take his team to state someday, just you watch." Meanwhile, my report cards filled with straight, "as warranted," barely a nod. "That's what we expect from you, Jaden," Mom would say already, turning her attention back to whatever Tyler was doing. No celebration, no special dinner, just a quiet acknowledgement that I'd met the minimum requirement. Christmas mornings told the story clearly. When I was 12, I received practical gifts, a calculator, new winter boots, and books about computer programming since I'd shown interest in technology. Tyler, at 8, unwrapped a brand new bicycle, an expensive baseball glove, and a gaming console my parents had previously told me was too expensive when I'd asked for one. "Tyler needs proper equipment to develop his talents," Dad explained when he caught my disappointed expression. "Your gifts will help with your schoolwork. Different kids, different needs." By the time I reached high school, the pattern was firmly established. I joined the computer club and excelled in mathematics and science competitions, bringing home trophies and certificates that ended up in a box in the attic. Meanwhile, the living room gradually transformed into a shrine to Tyler's athletic achievements, shelves lined with trophies, walls adorned with framed newspaper clippings about his baseball and football accomplishments. My parents never missed Tyler's games, rearranging work schedules and canceling appointments to cheer from the stands. But when I qualified for the state mathematics Olympiad, Mom had parent-teacher conferences she couldn't reschedule, and Dad had an important client meeting. "You'll be fine on your own, Jaden. You're always so independent," Mom said, handing me bus fare. "Make sure to take pictures if you win anything." While they cultivated Tyler's athletic talents with private coaches and summer camps, they guided me toward practical pursuits. When I expressed interest in computer science innovation, Dad sat me down for a serious talk. "Look, son, it's great that you're good with computers, but focus on the stable career paths. Network administration, corporate IT, that's where the steady paychecks are. Leave the risky innovation stuff to people who can afford to fail." The message was clear. Tyler could dream big with their full support, but I needed to stay practical and not reach too high. I retreated into my world of coding and computers, finding solace in the logical, predictable nature of programming. At least computers responded consistently to the right inputs, unlike my parents' affection, which seemed forever out of reach regardless of what I achieved. By senior year of high school, I'd stopped bringing friends home, tired of watching my parents transform from distracted and dismissive with me to animated and engaged the moment Tyler entered the room. My girlfriend at the time, Rachel, pointed it out after one uncomfortable dinner. "Do your parents realize they asked Tyler about his day 3 times and never once asked you about anything?" she whispered as we escaped to my room to study. I just shrugged, the observation too painful to acknowledge aloud. It's just how things are. As college application season arrived, I applied to top computer science programs across the country. When my acceptance letter from Stanford arrived with a substantial merit scholarship, I expected finally to see pride in my parents' eyes. Stanford's expensive, even with that scholarship, Dad commented, frowning at the letter. Have you considered State University? Your brother's likely heading there on a baseball scholarship in a few years. You could be there together and we could save on housing. That night I made a decision that would alter the course of my life. I would go as far away as possible, build my own success, and one day make them regret every dismissive comment and missed milestone. Not out of revenge, but to finally prove my worth. What I didn't realize then was that the validation I sought would never come from the sources I expected. The journey ahead would teach me painful lessons about family dynamics, self-worth, and what truly constitutes success. Stanford's campus felt like breathing fresh air after years of suffocation. Here, nobody knew me as Tyler's brother or had preconceived notions about my place in the family hierarchy. For the first time, I existed completely as myself, defined by my own merits and choices. Orientation week introduced me to Brian and Alicia, fellow computer science students, who quickly became my closest friends. Brian, a wiry kid from Chicago with lightning-fast coding skills, recognized my talent immediately. "Dude, the way you optimized that algorithm was seriously impressive," he told me after our first programming lab. "You've got a real intuition for this stuff." Simple words, but they landed like rainfall on parched soil. Someone had noticed my abilities without qualification or comparison. Academically, I thrived. My professors praised my problem-solving approach and creative thinking. Professor Richardson, a pioneer in artificial intelligence, even invited me to assist with his research during sophomore year, an honor typically reserved for graduate students. "You have a unique perspective, Jaden," he told me. "You see connections others miss." I called home monthly, sharing news about classes and research opportunities. Mom would listen briefly before steering the conversation to updates about Tyler's latest tournament victory or scholarship offer. "That's nice about your research thing, honey. Did I tell you Tyler pitched a no-hitter last weekend? The college scouts were so impressed. Your father recorded it. We'll have to show you at Thanksgiving." Thanksgiving break my sophomore year proved particularly illuminating. I'd been selected for a prestigious internship at a major tech company for the following summer, an opportunity that could set the trajectory of my entire career. At dinner, I waited for a lull in the conversation about Tyler's sporting achievements to share my news. "That's a good opportunity," Dad said with a nod. "Internships look good on resumes." Then immediately, "Tyler, tell Jaden about the state championship game coming up." Tyler, to his credit, looked uncomfortable with the abrupt subject change. Later that night, he knocked on my bedroom door. "Congrats on that internship, bro. Sounds really impressive." I studied my brother's face, searching for sarcasm or mockery, but found only sincerity. "Thanks, Tyler. That actually means a lot." He hesitated in the doorway. "I know Mom and Dad are intense about my sports stuff. Sometimes I wish they'd chill about it, you know. It's a lot of pressure." That brief exchange planted a seed of realization. Tyler wasn't my enemy. He was in his own way trapped in our parents' expectations, just as I was, just on the more favorable side of them. Graduation came faster than expected. I completed my degree with highest honors, landed a job at Meridian Tech in San Francisco, and prepared to start my adult life. When the ceremony date approached, I sent my parents the information months in advance. "We're so proud of you, honey," Mom said over the phone, "but Tyler has regional finals that weekend. You understand how important this is for his future. We'll make it up to you when you come home after." I attended my graduation ceremony alone, watching other families celebrating together across the stadium. As I accepted my diploma, I scanned the crowd briefly, still harboring a childish hope that they might have surprised me by showing up. The empty seats where they should have been taught me the final lesson of my education. I needed to build a life where my happiness didn't depend on their approval. My first apartment in San Francisco was small, but entirely mine. My starting position at Meridian Tech placed me on a team developing business software solutions, not the cutting-edge work I'd dreamed of, but a solid beginning. I threw myself into every project, staying late and volunteering for the challenging assignments others avoided. Daniel, my team leader, noticed. "You've got a fire under you that most new grads don't have, Wilson. Keep this up and you won't be in an entry-level position for long." He was right. Within 18 months, I received my first promotion to senior developer, along with a substantial salary increase. I called my parents with the news. "That's nice, honey," Mom said. "Did you hear Tyler signed with the state college team? Full athletic scholarship. We're having a celebration barbecue this weekend. You should come home for it, if you can get time off." I made the excuse of a critical project deadline and stayed in San Francisco. Over the next 3 years, I established myself as a valuable asset at Meridian. I created innovative solutions for clients, earned excellent performance reviews, and built a reputation as someone who could solve the problems others couldn't. Meanwhile, Tyler entered college on his baseball scholarship, with my parents attending every home game. During one of my rare visits home, Mom proudly showed me the new addition they'd built onto the house, a special display room for Tyler's growing collection of trophies and memorabilia. "Isn't it wonderful your father designed it himself? We wanted Tyler to know how proud we are of everything he's accomplished." I stared at the shrine to my brother's achievements, thinking of my own awards and recognition certificates still stored in unmarked boxes in the attic. The contrast couldn't have been clearer if they'd painted it on the wall. That night, my father approached me as I sat alone on the back porch. "The roof needs some repair work," he said without preamble. "Contractor estimates it'll cost around $6,300. Your mother and I are a bit stretched thin with all the traveling to Tyler's games." He didn't explicitly ask, but the implication hung in the air between us. "You need me to help with the cost?" I asked directly. Relief washed over his face. "We'd pay you back, of course, once things settled down a bit." I wrote the check the next morning, telling myself it was an investment in my childhood home, not another sacrifice on the altar of my parents' favoritism. I knew even as I handed it over that I would likely never see that money again. What I couldn't have known was how that $6,300 would later become the breaking point in our family's carefully maintained facade. As my 20s progressed, I found myself thriving professionally, while still struggling with the emotional legacy of my childhood. After 3 years at Meridian Tech, I made a bold move to Quantum Solutions, a smaller but more innovative company that allowed me creative freedom I'd never experienced before. My new role put me in charge of developing NextGen, a revolutionary project management platform that integrated artificial intelligence to predict project bottlenecks before they occurred. The concept had been floating around the company for years, but no one had successfully implemented it until I developed a unique algorithm approach. "This could change how the entire industry handles complex projects," my director Sophia remarked during my presentation. "Jaden, I want you to lead the development team. This is your baby now." For the first time, I had complete ownership of something that could make a genuine impact. I assembled a team of talented developers and poured myself into the project, working evenings and weekends to perfect the system architecture. 12 months of intensive development later, NextGen launched to industry acclaim. Tech journals published features about the innovative approach. Competitors scrambled to develop similar systems. Within 6 months, our client list included 5 Fortune 500 companies. My name became known in tech circles as someone who could translate theoretical concepts into practical market-ready solutions. Each professional milestone brought congratulatory emails from colleagues, LinkedIn messages from industry peers, and celebratory dinners with friends, but silence from my family. I'd share my accomplishments during monthly calls home, only to have them acknowledged with a quick, "That's nice," before the conversation inevitably turned to Tyler's baseball career. Tyler graduated from college and signed with a minor league team affiliated with the Chicago Cubs. My parents threw an elaborate party at their country club, inviting extended family, neighbors, and seemingly everyone from our hometown. "We're so blessed to have raised such a talented athlete," my mother gushed in the Facebook photos she tagged me in. "Always knew he was destined for greatness." I commented with congratulations for Tyler, swallowing the bitter observation that no such celebration had acknowledged any of my achievements. Tyler himself called me the next day. "Thanks for the congrats, bro. Wish you could have been there." Work commitments. I lied, unwilling to admit I hadn't received an actual invitation, just the social media announcements everyone else saw. "Yeah," figured. "Mom said you're doing really well at your computer job. Some kind of promotion." I almost laughed at the vague description of leading a revolutionary software development that was making waves throughout the tech industry. Something like that. Cool, cool. Hey, I appreciate you being supportive and all. Some of the guys on the team have siblings who are super jealous and competitive. His comment caught me off guard. Why would I be jealous? I don't know, man. Mom always talks about how you struggled with me getting attention growing up. The revisionist history stunned me into momentary silence. I had never complained to my parents about the disparity in treatment. I'd been too afraid of seeming petty or ungrateful. Somehow, in their narrative, my quiet acceptance had transformed into jealous struggling. That's not how I remember it. I managed finally. Oh, well, you know, Mom. She has her own version of everything. Tyler paused. Anyway, I should go. Early practice tomorrow. Take care, bro. The conversation left me unsettled for days, wondering what other distorted stories my parents had constructed about our childhood. The need for professional therapy became increasingly clear as I found myself distracted at work, ruminating over past interactions and second-guessing my own memories. Dr. Melanie Torres, a therapist specializing in family dynamics, helped me understand the toxic patterns that had shaped our family. What you're describing sounds like classic golden child and scapegoat dynamics, she explained during our third session. In many dysfunctional families, parents channel their hopes, dreams, and positive projections into one child, the golden child, while another becomes the repository for disappointment, criticism, and emotional neglect. But why, I asked the question that had haunted me since childhood. What did I do wrong? Nothing, she said firmly. These roles are assigned based on the parent's unresolved issues and needs, not because of anything inherently deserving or undeserving about either child. Your brother didn't ask to be the golden child, any more than you asked to be overlooked. Over months of therapy, I began recognizing how deeply these dynamics had affected my sense of self-worth. Every achievement became a desperate attempt to prove my value. Every relationship was shadowed by the fear of being replaceable, forgettable. Around this time, I met Amanda at a tech conference in Boston. Smart, confident, and refreshingly direct, she worked in UX design for a competing company. Our conversation about ethical considerations in AI development turned into dinner, which evolved into weekend visits between our cities and eventually a serious relationship. Amanda noticed the pattern with my family immediately. After listening to a particularly dismissive phone call with my mother, she couldn't hide her indignation. Does she realize she just spent 15 minutes talking about your brother's baseball statistics and didn't ask a single question about your life after you told her about winning the Innovation Award? I shrugged, the response so familiar it barely registered anymore. That's just how they are. No, Jaden. That's not just how people are. That's how people are when they're playing favorites in a really unhealthy way. Her directness was both uncomfortable and refreshing. Have you ever called them out on it? The question stunned me. The idea of confronting my parents had never seemed like an option. We simply didn't discuss such things in our family. Emotions, especially negative ones, remained unacknowledged until they could be repackaged as something more palatable or ignored entirely. I wouldn't even know where to start, I admitted. Amanda took my hand. Start by recognizing that you deserve better. Their inability to see your worth doesn't diminish it. But at some point, you might need to stop seeking validation from people who aren't equipped to give it to you. Her words echoed those of my therapist, who had been encouraging me to establish healthier boundaries with my family. The concept still felt foreign, almost sacrilegious. Despite everything, they were still my parents. And somewhere beneath the hurt and resentment, I still longed for their approval. That longing would be tested in ways I couldn't imagine when an unexpected promotion coincided with Tyler's first major injury, setting in motion to a series of events that would finally force all of us to confront the cracks in our Carrick's family's foundation. The email arrived on a Tuesday afternoon. Congratulations. We are pleased to offer you the position of Chief Innovation Officer at Quantum Solutions. I stared at my screen in disbelief. At 32, I would become the youngest C-suite executive in the company's history. The promotion came with a corner office, a significant salary increase, and a seat at the table where the company's future would be shaped. Amanda insisted on a proper celebration. This isn't just any promotion, Jaden. This is recognition of everything you've built over the past decade. We're marking this occasion appropriately. She organized a surprise gathering at Elevation, an upscale restaurant with panoramic views of the San Francisco skyline. Walking in to find 20 colleagues and friends cheering for me created a lump in my throat. These people, many of whom I'd known for just a few years, showed more genuine enthusiasm for my success than my family ever had. Speech called Brian, who had moved to San Francisco 2 years after me, and now worked at a neighboring tech firm. Standing before people who truly saw me, who valued my contributions and celebrated my achievements without qualification or comparison, something shifted inside me. For perhaps the first time I felt worthy of the recognition not because of what the achievement might make others think of me, but because I knew the work and dedication it represented. I want to thank all of you, I said, glass raised. Not just for being here tonight, but for being the kind of friends and colleagues who make the journey worthwhile. Success means more when you have people to share it with who genuinely care. Later that night, riding high on validation and expensive champagne, I did something unprecedented. I posted about my achievement on Instagram. Normally intensely private about my professional life on social media, I decided it was time to own my success publicly. Amanda took a professional quality photo of me in my new office, smiling confidently beside the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. I crafted a thoughtful caption, "Honored and humbled to step into my new role as Chief Innovation Officer at Quantum Solutions. The path hasn't always been easy, but every challenge has led to this moment. Grateful for everyone who believed in me along the way. Here's to building the future one innovation at a time. New chapter tech leadership." The post quickly accumulated likes and positive comments. Former classmates, colleagues from previous jobs, and industry connections offered congratulations. Even Tyler liked it and commented, "Crushing it, bro. Super proud of you." I was scrolling through the notifications when a new comment appeared from my mother's account. "Stop bragging, nobody cares. Your brother will always be our pride." The words landed like a physical blow. I stared at the screen, unable to process that my own mother had publicly humiliated me on what should have been one of my proudest moments. Amanda, reading over my shoulder, gasped, "Jaden, I don't even have words. That's incredibly cruel." My phone began buzzing with text messages. Friends who had seen the comment were checking if I was okay. Several suggested I delete it, but something in me refused to hide the truth any longer. Brian called immediately. "Dude, I just saw your mom's comment. That's seriously messed up. Are you all right?" "I don't know," I answered honestly, still staring at the words on my screen. I guess I always knew that's how she felt, but seeing it spelled out like that. "It says way more about her than it does about you," he assured me. "Everyone else can see how incredible your achievement, Island." Over the next hour, something remarkable happened. Friends, colleagues, and even industry acquaintances began responding directly to my mother's comment. "Jaden is one of the most brilliant minds in tech right now. You should be immensely proud. As someone who's worked with your son for years, I can tell you he's changing the industry." His humility makes this comment even more shocking. What an appalling thing to say to your child who just reached a career pinnacle. Shame on you. My phone rang again. Tyler. "Jaden, I just saw Mom's comment. That was totally out of line. I called her and told her to take it down or apologize." His support, while appreciated, couldn't stem the tide of emotions breaking through years of careful suppression. After hanging up, I finally allowed myself to feel the full weight of the rejection I'd been carrying since childhood. I broke down completely, sobbing in Amanda's arms like I hadn't cried since I was a small boy. Years of swallowed hurt of achievements diminished of constantly being measured against my brother, and found wanting it all poured out in heaving, painful waves. "Why am I still seeking their approval?" I choked out between sobs. "Why do I still care what they think?" "Because they're your parents," Amanda said, softly stroking my hair. "We're programmed to seek our parents' love and validation. It's the most natural thing in the world. What's unnatural is how they've withheld it from you." After the emotional storm passed, I felt different, raw and tender. but also lighter. Something had broken free inside me. The desperate need for parental approval that had driven me for decades began to loosen its grip on my heart. Mom called the next morning. I let it go to voicemail, not ready to hear whatever justification she might offer. Her message was predictably defensive. "Jaden, I think you're overreacting to a simple comment. I was just trying to keep you humble. Success can go to people's heads, you know. Call me back when you've calmed down." No apology, no recognition of how hurtful her words had been. Just another example of how my feelings didn't matter in the family equation. When I finally returned her call that evening, I broke the pattern of a lifetime. "What you did was cruel and humiliating," I said without preamble. "You took a moment that was significant to me and deliberately diminished it in front of everyone I know. I was just—" "No," I interrupted, surprising both of us. "I'm not interested in explanations that make this my fault for being too sensitive or lacking humility. For once, I need you to hear me. What you said hurt me deeply, and it was part of a pattern that's existed my entire life." Silence stretched across the line. Then, in a voice tinged with genuine confusion, "What pattern?" The question confirmed what I'd suspected for years. The favoritism was so natural to my parents that they genuinely couldn't see it. In their reality, they were simply responding appropriately to their children's different paths, not actively creating those differences through their treatment. "Mom, when was the last time you bragged about my accomplishments the way you do about Tyler's?" I asked quietly. "That's different. Tyler's career is more public. People understand sports achievements. And becoming a chief innovation officer at 32 isn't understandable, Mom. I'm in the top 1% of my field. Industry publications have written about my work. But you've never once shared that with friends or family the way you share Tyler's every game statistic." She sighed, the sound heavy with impatience. "Jaden, I don't know why you're so determined to compete with your brother. There's always been something there, some jealousy." I hung up. The conversation was following the same circular pattern it always had, where my legitimate concerns were reframed as character flaws. The narrative would never change as long as I participated in it. What I didn't realize was that the Instagram incident was just the catalyst. The real family reckoning would come 2 weeks later, when my parents' financial house of cards began to collapse, bringing our dysfunctional dynamics into sharp relief. The call from my father came on a Sunday morning as Amanda and I were enjoying coffee on our balcony. Seeing his name on my screen sent a jolt of anxiety through my system. My parents rarely called on weekends unless something was wrong. "Jaden, son, how are you?" His forced cheerfulness immediately put me on alert. This wasn't a social call. "I'm fine, Dad. What's going on?" He cleared his throat, the sound I'd associated since childhood with uncomfortable financial discussions. "Well, your mother and I are in a bit of a situation, and we were hoping you might be able to help us out." I waited, saying nothing, forcing him to continue without my usual eagerness to please. "It's about your brother," he said, eventually. "Tyler had a pretty serious injury last month. Tore his rotator cuff completely, the doctors say. Well, his baseball career is effectively over." The news was genuinely upsetting. Despite our complicated relationship, I'd never wished failure on Tyler. "I'm really sorry to hear that. Is he okay emotionally?" "He's struggling," Dad admitted. "The team released him from his contract. He's been staying with us while he figures out next steps. The problem is there were significant medical expenses that his sports insurance didn't cover, and the rehabilitation program that might get him back to playing form is expensive." The familiar sinking feeling returned. "How much are we talking about, Dad?" "Around $15,000 would get everything covered and give Tyler a cushion while he regroups." The amount took my breath away, more than double what I'd already lent them. "That's a significant amount of money." "We know it's a lot to ask," he said quickly. "But you're doing so well with your new position. Your mother mentioned something about a big promotion." The casual reference to my achievement, the same one my mother had publicly dismissed, reignited my anger. Yes, the promotion she told the entire internet nobody cares about. An uncomfortable pause followed. "She feels terrible about that comment, Jaden. You know your mother speaks without thinking sometimes. But this isn't about that. This is about helping your brother when he needs it most. What happened to the money I sent for the roof repairs? I asked suddenly. $6,300. Was that actually used to fix the roof? Another telling pause. Well, we had some unexpected expenses come up right around then. Tyler needed specialized equipment for training camp. The revelation shouldn't have surprised me, but it did. So you lied to me. You asked for money claiming it was for house repairs when it was actually for Tyler. We didn't lie exactly, he hedged. We were going to fix the roof, but Tyler's needs took priority. We figured you wouldn't mind helping your brother. The problem isn't helping Tyler, Dad. It's the fact that you weren't honest with me. And now you're asking for more than twice that amount again for Tyler. Son, I don't understand why you're making this so complicated. We're family. Family helps each other. The simplicity of his statement clarified everything for me. In my parents' worldview, family meant I should give freely to support their priorities, specifically Tyler, without question or hesitation. My role was to provide resources without requiring transparency, honesty, or reciprocity. I need to think about this, I said finally. I'll call you back. Amanda had heard enough of the conversation to understand its essence. Let me guess. They need money for Tyler, and they assume you'll just write a check without question. $15,000, I confirmed. Apparently the $6,300 I gave them for roof repairs actually went to Tyler's training equipment. She shook her head. Jaden, I know they're your parents, but this pattern is exploitative. They dismiss your achievements while expecting you to finance theirs. Deep down, I knew she was right. Dr. Torres had been helping me recognize these unhealthy patterns, but knowing intellectually that boundaries were necessary and actually establishing them were different matters entirely. What would you do? I asked Amanda. I can't answer that for you, she said gently, but I think you need to ask yourself. If you give them this money, what message does it send? That they can continue treating you as an ATM while diminishing who you are and what you've accomplished. That evening, I made one of the most difficult decisions of my life. I called my father back. Dad, I've thought about your request, and I need to talk to you and Mom in person about it. I'll fly home next weekend. Son Tyler needs this money sooner rather than... Next weekend, Dad. This conversation needs to happen face to face. The following Saturday found me sitting at my parents' dining room table, the same place where countless family dynamics had played out over the years. Mom had prepared an elaborate meal, her typical strategy, when difficult conversations loomed. Tyler joined us looking physically diminished from when I'd last seen him. His usual athletic confidence had given way to a defeated slump in his shoulders. I felt a surge of genuine sympathy for him. Before we discuss anything else, I began carefully after dinner. I want to be clear that I'm sorry about your injury, Tyler. I know how much baseball means to you. He nodded, eyes downcast. Thanks, bro. It's been rough accepting that the dream is over. So, about the financial assistance, Dad interjected, eager to reach the point of the visit. Your mother and I have gathered all the medical bills and rehabilitation program estimates. He pushed a folder toward me. I left it unopened on the table. Before we get to that, I need to address something else. For years, there's been a pattern in this family that no one acknowledges. I've been treated differently than Tyler my entire life. My achievements have been minimized, while his have been celebrated. Mom immediately became defensive. That's simply not true, Jaden. We've always been proud of both our boys. Really, I countered, maintaining a calm tone. Then why is there a room dedicated to Tyler's trophies, while my academic and professional achievements have never even made it to the refrigerator door? Why have you attended every one of Tyler's games but missed my college? Graduation. Why did you publicly humiliate me on social media when I shared news about a major promotion? Dad shifted uncomfortably. Different kids need different types of support. Tyler's career path required more visible encouragement. And what about my career path? Do you even know what I actually do? Can either of you explain my job beyond something with computers? Their silence was damning. I'm not refusing to help because I don't care about Tyler, I continued. I'm setting a boundary because our family dynamic is unhealthy, and continuing to participate in it without acknowledgement or change hurts all of us. This is ridiculous, Mom snapped, her patience evaporating. We drive all the way to Tyler's games to support him because that's what parents do. You never needed that kind of support. You were always independent. I wasn't independent by choice, I replied, feeling years of suppressed emotion rising to the surface. I became independent because I learned early that depending on you for emotional support was futile. And now you're asking me for financial support without acknowledging any of this history. The conversation devolved from there, with my parents alternating between denial, minimization, and outright anger at my selfishness and jealousy. I maintained my position calmly but firmly, even as my mother's accusations grew more personal. You've always been difficult, Jaden. Even as a child, you were so sensitive, always needing attention. We raised you to be stronger than this. As the tension escalated, Tyler suddenly slammed his hand on the table, silencing everyone. "Stop it," he said, his voice shaking. "Just stop it, Mom. Everything Jaden's saying is true, and you know it." The shock of Tyler's intervention created a momentary vacuum in the room. He had never before contradicted our parents, especially not in defense of me. "You've always treated him like he was less important." Tyler continued, tears forming in his eyes. "I noticed it even when we were kids. Do you have any idea how much pressure that put on me? To be the special one, to justify all that attention and investment." Mom stared at him, genuinely speechless, for perhaps the first time in her life. "And now you're asking him for money again, while still treating him like his accomplishments don't matter." Tyler turned to me. "I had no idea they took that money for my training equipment, Jaden. They told me they'd saved up for it." The revelation created a strange solidarity between us, both victims of our parents' manipulations in different ways. Tyler, the golden child, crushed under the weight of impossible expectations. Me, the overlooked child, starved of recognition and validation. "I'm not giving you the $15,000, I said, finally addressing my parents. "Not because I don't care about Tyler, but because enabling this dynamic isn't helping any of us. If you want a relationship with me going forward, things need to change fundamentally." I stood up, sensing that nothing more could be accomplished that night. "I'll be staying at the hotel in town. Tyler, if you want to talk more, you have my number." As I walked out, I heard my mother's shocked voice behind me. "You're choosing to abandon your family when we need you most, after everything we've done for you." I paused at the door, turned back, and delivered the truest words I'd ever spoken to them. "I'm not abandoning my family. I'm inviting you to finally include me in it as an equal member, not a resource to be tapped when convenient." The drive to the hotel was surreal, adrenaline coursing through my system. I had finally said aloud the things I'd silenced for decades. Whether it would change anything remained to be seen, but for the first time I had honored my own truth regardless of their reaction to it. The fallout from my confrontation with my parents was swift and predictable. By the next morning, my phone buzzed with a barrage of text messages from extended family members. "Your mother is devastated. How could you refuse to help your brother in his time of need? Family supports family. Period. Your father says you've changed since moving to California. Tyler's entire future is at stake. Whatever childhood jealousy you're holding on to needs to be put aside now." It was clear my parents had immediately begun damage control, spinning a narrative where I was the villain who abandoned family obligations because of petty resentment. The fact that none of these relatives had ever acknowledged my career achievements or life milestones only reinforced the family dynamics I'd named. I drafted a simple response to send to each of them. "I appreciate your concern, but you've heard only one perspective on a complex situation. I love my family and want healthy relationships with all of them." Tyler called around noon. "Can we meet somewhere? Just the two of us." We arranged to meet at a small coffee shop downtown, away from our parents' influence. When he arrived, he looked like he hadn't slept. "Mom and Dad have been on the phone all morning," he said, dropping heavily into the chair across from me. "The way they're talking, you'd think you committed some kind of criminal act." "Are you surprised?" I asked. He shook his head. "Not really. Not anymore." He wrapped his hands around his coffee cup. "I need to apologize to you, Jaden. Not just for this mess now, but for all of it. For never speaking up when I saw how differently they treated you. for accepting all the advantages without questioning why you didn't get the same. His sincerity caught me off guard. Throughout our childhood, Tyler had seemed oblivious to the disparity in our treatment, or at least unbothered by it. Now I wondered how much of that perception had been my own projection. "You were just a kid too," I reminded him. "It wasn't your responsibility to fix our parents' behavior." "Maybe not then, but I'm 38 now. I've had plenty of time to notice and say something." He looked directly at me. "The truth is, it was easier not to. As long as I stayed in my role as the golden child athlete, everything was simple. Everyone knew what to expect from me." His admission revealed a perspective I'd never considered: how the dynamic that had hurt me had also trapped him. "What they did with that money you sent," he continued, shaking his head, "that was wrong on every level. Using me as the excuse without telling either of us the truth." "Did they tell you what the money was really for?" Tyler nodded. "After you left last night, Dad admitted everything. Said they didn't think you'd mind once you knew it was for my training equipment." He looked disgusted. "As if that makes stealing from one child to give to another okay." "What are you going to do now?" I asked, genuinely curious about his plans post-baseball. He shrugged. "Honestly, I have no idea. Baseball was the only future they ever encouraged me to imagine. I never developed any other skills or interests, because everything was always about the next game, the next tournament, the next level." His expression turned thoughtful. "I actually always thought your computer stuff seemed interesting, but Dad shut me down when I mentioned taking some tech classes in college." "Really, I had no idea." "Yeah, they had very fixed ideas about who we were supposed to be. You were the smart one who should be practical and stable. I was the athlete who would bring glory to the family name." He gave a bitter laugh. "Now I'm 38 with a busted shoulder, no career, and no backup plan." An idea began forming in my mind, tentative at first, then gaining clarity. What if you came to stay with me in San Francisco for a while? Get some distance from Mom and Dad, figure out what you actually want. The surprise on his face was almost comical. "You'd do that after everything? You're not responsible for our parents' behavior, Tyler, and maybe it's time we built our own relationship outside of their influence." 2 days later, I returned to San Francisco alone, but with a plan. Tyler would finish his initial physical therapy locally, then join me in California within a month. I'd help him explore career options in tech if that genuinely interested him. My parents predictably didn't take the news well. "So you're stealing your brother away now, too?" Mom accused during my brief goodbye visit. "It's not enough that you're withholding financial help. I'm offering Tyler a chance to build his own life." I corrected her. "Something both of you should want for him." Dad looked genuinely confused by the turn of events. "But his life is here with us. He needs our support while he recovers. What he needs is space to discover who he is beyond the identity you've constructed for him," I countered. "Just like I needed to move across the country to find myself outside the role you assigned me." As I drove away from the house that had never truly felt like home, a strange sense of peace settled over me. For the first time, I wasn't running away from their dismissal or chasing their approval. I was simply choosing a different path, one that honored my worth and opened possibilities for a healthier relationship with my brother. The first weeks back in San Francisco brought a flurry of messages from my parents, alternating between guilt trips, angry accusations, and occasional awkward attempts at reconciliation without acknowledgement of the core issues. "Your father and I have been thinking about what you said," one of Mom's voicemails began promisingly before pivoting to, "We realize we may have occasionally made you feel less special, but that was never our intention. Some children just naturally attract more attention with their achievements." Even their attempts at understanding continued to minimize and dismiss. Dr. Torres helped me maintain perspective during our sessions. "They're experiencing what we call cognitive dissonance," she explained. "You've presented a reality that contradicts the narrative they've constructed about themselves as parents. Accepting your perspective would require them to confront uncomfortable truths about their behavior and its impact." "So they probably won't ever really get it?" I asked. "People can change," she said carefully, "but it usually requires a willingness to sit with discomfort and examine oneself honestly. Some people find that more difficult than others. Meanwhile, Tyler and I spoke regularly, developing the brotherly relationship we'd never had chance to build under our parents' influence. He arrived in San Francisco 4 weeks after I returned, moving into my spare bedroom with little more than 2 suitcases and uncertain prospects. "It's weird," he confessed on his first night there. "This is the first time in my life I don't have mom and dad telling me exactly what I should be doing and exactly how great I am at doing it." "Scary?" I asked. "Terrifying," he admitted, "but also, I'm kind of freeing." Over the following weeks, I helped Tyler explore various aspects of the tech industry. He shadowed different departments at Quantum Solutions, took online coding classes, and discovered a surprising aptitude for user experience design. "I think I like this because it's about understanding how regular people interact with technology," he explained one evening. "It's not about being the smartest coder or the most technical person. It's about empathy and making things work better for people." Watching my brother discover genuine passion and aptitude away from the pressure of our parents' expectations became one of the most rewarding experiences of my life. The resentment I'd carried since childhood gradually dissolved, replaced by a new understanding of Tyler as a fellow survivor of our family's dysfunction rather than its beneficiary. Meanwhile, my parents continued their campaign to reclaim control of the narrative. Extended family gatherings became forums for them to paint themselves as victims of ungrateful children. My Aunt Susan called to check in after Thanksgiving. "Your parents seem devastated, Jaden. They say they haven't heard from either of you boys in weeks." "That's interesting," I replied calmly, "considering I've called them every Sunday, and Tyler speaks to them every Wednesday." "Oh." Her surprise was evident. "They mentioned something about you turning Tyler against them." "Tyler is 38 years old, Aunt Susan. He's making his own decisions about his life and his relationship with Mom and Dad." The conversation illustrated how committed my parents were to maintaining their version of reality, even when it required outright fabrication. But for the first time, I felt secure enough in my own truth not to be shaken by their manipulations. As Christmas approached, Tyler and I discussed whether to visit Minnesota for the holidays. "I'm not ready," he admitted. "Every time I talk to them on the phone, they're still pushing me to move back home and still talking about baseball rehabilitation options. I've already told them I'm not interested in pursuing." "We could invite them here," I suggested, surprising myself with the offer. Tyler looked skeptical. "Do you really want that?" "Not particularly," I said honestly, "but continuing to avoid them entirely feels like running away. Maybe it's time to see if they're capable of meeting us on new terms." The invitation was extended. Their response was telling they couldn't possibly travel during the holidays because everyone expects us to host the family Christmas as always. The subtext was clear. Their established roles and traditions took priority over rebuilding relationships with their sons. Instead, Tyler and I created our own holiday tradition. We invited friends for Christmas dinner, volunteered at a local shelter on Christmas Eve, and spent quality time simply enjoying each other's company without the weight of family expectations. As the new year began, I realized something fundamental had shifted within me. The ache for parental validation, the driving force behind so many of my life choices, had diminished to a dull background awareness rather than an acute pain. In its place grew something more valuable: self-validation and authentic connection with people who saw and appreciated me for exactly who I was. 6 months after the confrontation at my parents' dining room table, spring arrived in San Francisco, bringing with it a sense of renewal that mirrored my internal journey. The city bloomed with colorful flowers and fresh possibilities, and for the first time in my adult life, I felt fully present in my own story, rather than constantly seeking external validation. My professional success continued to flourish at Quantum Solutions. The next-gen platform had revolutionized project management across multiple industries, and I was invited to deliver keynote speeches at major tech conferences. But the difference now was that I no longer measured my worth by these achievements. They were satisfying accomplishments, not desperate attempts to prove my value. Therapy with Dr. Torres continued to provide valuable insights. "The goal isn't to stop caring what your parents think entirely," she explained during one session. "That's nearly impossible for most people. The goal is to develop a strong enough sense of self that their opinions no longer define you. I was beginning to understand that distinction. The little boy who craved his parents' approval would always exist somewhere inside me, but he no longer drove my decisions or dominated my emotional landscape. Tyler had settled remarkably well into his new life in San Francisco. He completed a 12-week intensive UX design boot camp and landed an entry-level position at a growing startup. Despite starting over in his late 30s, he approached his new career with enthusiasm and humility. "I keep waiting for the identity crisis to hit," he confessed over dinner one night. 38 years of being Tyler the baseball player, and now I'm just not that anymore. "How does that feel?" I asked. He considered the question seriously. Weirdly, okay, like I'm more than that one thing I was good at. There's a freedom in not having my entire identity wrapped up in something so fragile. One shoulder injury and poof, career over. But this, he gestured to the UX wireframes he'd been working on. "This I can do until I'm 80 if I want to." Watching Tyler discover who he was outside our parents' expectations helped me recognize how much of my own identity had been shaped in reaction to their dismissal. The drive to achieve, to prove myself worthy, it had fueled my success, but at a cost to my sense of intrinsic value. Amanda had become an essential part of my healing journey. Her unwavering support and clear-eyed perspective helped me navigate the complex emotions that arose as I established new boundaries with my family. "Have you thought more about your mom's latest email?" she asked one evening as we walked along the waterfront. My mother had sent a message that seemed on the surface more reflective than her previous communications. "I've been thinking about some of the things you said during your visit. Maybe there's some truth to how differently we treated you and Tyler growing up. I just want my family back together." "It's progress, I guess," I replied, watching sailboats drift across the bay. "She's acknowledging some truth to what I've been saying for months. But there's still no real apology, no specific recognition of how their behavior affected me." Amanda squeezed my hand. "You don't have to decide right now how much relationship you want with them going forward. It's okay to take time and see if this represents genuine change or just another attempt to regain control." Her wisdom reminded me of something Dr. Torres had emphasized repeatedly. Healing wasn't linear, and neither was the process of rebuilding damaged relationships. Some days I felt compassion for my parents, recognizing that they had likely repeated patterns from their own upbringings. Other days the hurt felt fresh and raw, their dismissal of my achievements in person still capable of cutting deep. The most surprising development came from an unexpected source. My father called on a Tuesday afternoon, asking if we could speak privately without my mother present. "I've been doing some reading," he began awkwardly, after I agreed to the conversation, "about family dynamics and favoritism." The word seemed difficult for him to say. "There's a lot I don't understand about all this psychology stuff, but some of it sounds familiar." I remained silent, allowing him the space to continue without prompting. "My father was the same way with my brother John," he admitted. "John was the athlete, the charmer. I was the quiet one who got good grades. Nothing I did was ever quite enough for Dad." He cleared his throat. "I always swore I'd never be like him, but it seems I just repeated the pattern without realizing it." The admission stunned me. In all our conversations about family dynamics, my father had never revealed this parallel in his own childhood. "I'm not saying I understand everything you've been trying to tell us," he continued, "but I'm trying, and I wanted you to know that." It wasn't a complete recognition of the harm done nor a full apology, but it represented something I hadn't expected, the beginning of self-reflection on his part. "Thank you for telling me that, Dad," I said, genuinely moved by the effort this confession must have required. "It helps me understand some things, too." Our conversation opened a small door to the possibility of a different kind of relationship, one built on greater honesty and awareness, even if full understanding remained a work in progress. My mother proved less capable of this kind of reflection. Her attempts at reconciliation continued to center her feelings and expectations rather than acknowledging the impact of her behavior. But I was learning that I could establish boundaries while still maintaining connection. "I'm happy to continue our Sunday calls," I told her after one particularly difficult conversation where she insisted I was still punishing her. "But if the conversation turns to criticism or dismissal of my choices, I'll need to end the call and try again next week. The boundary was tested immediately, so I'm not even allowed to express my opinions now. You're monitoring what I can and can't say as your mother. You can express any opinion you want, Mom, and I get to decide how much of that I'm willing to listen to. That's how healthy adult relationships work. The concept clearly frustrated her, but for the first time I didn't feel responsible for managing her emotional response. My worth wasn't determined by her approval, and my boundaries weren't negotiable based on her comfort. As summer transitioned to fall, Tyler and I established a new tradition: monthly dinners with Amanda and Tyler's new girlfriend Rachel, where we celebrated each other's achievements, large and small. These gatherings became sacred space, where every accomplishment received the recognition it deserved. Whether it was Tyler completing his first major UX project, Amanda winning a design award, or me simply taking a vacation without checking work emails. The contrast between these warm, affirming gatherings and the childhood dinners where my achievements had been systematically overlooked wasn't lost on either of us. This is what family should feel like, Tyler observed after one such evening. People who genuinely celebrate each other's successes without keeping score or playing favorites. We're creating the family we needed, I replied, the realization both sad and empowering. A year after the Instagram comment that had catalyzed our family's unraveling, I received a package from Minnesota. Inside was a framed certificate from my high school mathematics Olympiad, the competition my parents had been too busy to attend. Accompanying it was a note in my father's handwriting. Found this while cleaning the attic. Should have been displayed, not stored away. I'm sorry, son. The simple acknowledgement brought unexpected tears to my eyes. Not because I still needed the validation, but because it represented a small step toward healing for all of us. The wounded child within me felt seen, even if decades too late. My journey from seeking external validation to finding internal worth continued each day. Some mornings I still woke with the echoes of childhood inadequacy whispering in my ear. On those days I practiced the self-compassion Dr. Torres had taught me, acknowledging the hurt without letting it define my present. The pain of parental favoritism would always be part of my story, but it was no longer the central narrative of my life. I had learned that, while we can't choose the family we're born into, we can choose the family we create through authentic connection and mutual respect. Tyler moved into his own apartment that fall, but our newly forged brotherhood remained strong. We spoke almost daily, supporting each other through the continuing complexities of our relationship with our parents and celebrating our individual journeys of self-discovery. My parents visited San Francisco for Thanksgiving, their first trip to see where I lived, despite my 12 years in the city. The visit wasn't perfect. Old patterns emerged in subtle ways, but the difference now was my response. I could recognize the patterns without being devastated by them. I could set boundaries without anger or desperation. I could love my parents without needing them to be different than they were capable of being. As I reflect on the journey from that humiliating Instagram comment to the life I've built today, I'm reminded that true healing doesn't come from receiving the apologies we deserve or the validation we crave. It comes from recognizing our inherent worth, apart from others' ability to acknowledge it. The $6,300 my parents redirected to Tyler's training equipment without my knowledge became a strange gift in the end, the catalyst for confronting decades of unhealthy patterns and beginning the hard work of creating something healthier for the future. If you're watching this and recognizing similar patterns in your own family, know that your achievements matter. Your feelings matter. Your worth isn't determined by anyone else's ability to recognize it. Building a life that honors your authentic self is the most powerful response to those who fail to see your value. The journey isn't easy, and it isn't linear. There are days I still struggle, but on this side of healing, I can truthfully say the freedom of self-validation is worth every difficult conversation, every painful realization, and every courageous boundary. Have you experienced similar family dynamics in your life? How did you handle them? Let me know in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that their worth isn't defined by others' recognition. Thank you for joining me on this journey. And remember, the most important validation is the kind you give yourself. Until next time, take care of yourself. You deserve it more than you know.